Hey, what's up, guys? So today we're going to be talking about Dark Web number 1 that came out this past week. So this story involves different characters, mainly focused on the Spider-Man characters as well as X-Men. Of course, I'm going to be talking about the story, so there's going to be spoilers involved. If you haven't read the story and you want to know what happens and read it before you hear a random nerd talk about it on the internet, then probably do so. Otherwise, without further ado, let's begin. So the story starts off in a dream that Ben Reilly's having, and it's to nail down the point that he's having insecurities, of course, about being a clone and not feeling like he's his own actual person. He wants to have the life back and the memories that Peter Parker took from him, and to make sure to nail that point down in this dream that he's having, because he is sleeping in limbo, and that's gonna give him some like amplified nightmares, and that's basically what's happening right then and there. Ben Reilly wakes up screaming and makes it a point that he's never gonna take a nap in limbo ever again. Madelyne Pryor walks up to him and claims that emotion has power there. Pain and regret are currency. She claims that she focused her pain and regret to create a scythe of sorrows, a symbol sorta to control and command the demons in limbo. And she claims how she's gonna be using Ben Reilly's pain and regret as energy to amplify the army itself. In the next page, we just get them posing, claiming how everything was stolen from them and they're gonna go get it back. Now the story's gonna begin. Next, we're on the Coffee Bean. It's a coffee shop. It's December 13th and it is Harry Osborn's birthday, but he has passed away. They do make it a point. Here we get a good portion of like Peter Parker's friends and people that he knows just gathered up in the coffee shop, just talking and sort of celebrating Harry Osborn's birthday, even though he's not there. This is also where we get a little bit more info on MJ, but it's also not a lot. I guess they're really holding that off for her specific dark web tie-in, probably. But she brings up Paul and how he's at home sitting the kids because their babysitter fell through, so he wasn't able to make it. But that's all they really talk about. They don't really go into too much detail yet. MJ walks up to Peter and they start talking like normal. And Peter's like, yo, I thought you didn't want to talk to me or whatever. And she's like, yeah, but it's like Harry Osborn's birthday, right? We should not be at each other's throats. And then Peter goes off to buy MJ and himself a cup of coffee. And when he's about to get rung up, the cashier's like, yeah, dude, don't even worry about it. Some guy covered it already. And Peter's wondering, like, who did that? And the cashier just points outside to Norman Osborn, who's just hanging out. I mean, not really hanging out. He's just passing by. So Peter runs outside to catch up with him, and they both start reminiscing over Harry Osborn. And this is where they bring up how the previous time that Harry Osborn was alive, apparently he was a clone. There's a lot of clone nonsense happening in this story. And then Norman Osborn also brings up about how Peter Parker's clone, Ben Reilly, also just died in his arms in the last issue of the previous Spider-Man run. But they go on reminiscing about Harry Osborn a little bit more before Norman just heads out. And then we move over to Limbo, where Ben Reilly and Madelyne Pryor are just walking in a direction through this hallway to get to a specific room. Who's inside of the room? It's Venom. Now, personally, I honestly thought Venom was so underused in this issue. There was the most bare bones dialogue in association to his character from his comic run. So yeah, Venom's hanging out in this room. Madelyne Pryor, Ben Reilly walk in, and all Venom says is, "You said you'd help me find my son." And then he says again, "My son now," while Madelyne Pryor goes off rambling about the weirdness of the reality that they're in, which is limbo. He just gets irritated. He just cuts her off and he's like, yeah, dude, what about my son? Madelyne instructs Ben to close the door, and this is where shenanigans happen to Venom that they don't really talk about, they don't go into it. The next time you see Venom is at the very end of this comic. And we'll get to that when that time comes. But right now, we gotta focus on the X-Men. They're just walking through a crowd in New York. We got Cyclops, we got Jean. And fair to say, I don't read much X-Men, so I cannot name the other characters. Like, I could probably name them if I think about it, but I'm not gonna sit here and pretend like out of the top of my head I can honestly claim I can name every single character in the X-Men in this story. But the guy with the cool laser beam eyes is in it, so yeah, we got X-Men. But we got some of the X-Men, they're just hanging out, walking through a crowd. crowd, and we get this character named Magic. I don't know much about her character, but she is criticizing the Christmas decor, specifically like this elf display that's inside of like this store. And for like a split moment, one of the elves turns to look at her and chants one quick phrase, one like evil phrase, and then reverts back to its normal state. And she's like, "What? What was that?" Jean walks up to her and asks like if she's okay. Magic just explains like, yeah, I'm okay. Probably. After reading this book a little bit, they do make it a point that Magic and Madelyne Pryor have some sort of correlation going on, but they don't dig too deep into that because they don't get any sort of interaction with each other in this comic. But Magic seems concerned a little bit. Next we're in Limbo and Madelyne Pryor's hitting that mad riff on the keyboard. And I'm assuming she's giving out this like spell, this chant, to bring up the forces of the army that are within Limbo. And there's this very small thing I liked about this part where Madelyne Pryor turns around to Ben Reilly and Hallows Eve and she's like, "Do you like my song?" And Hallows Eve is like, "It sounds great, Maddie." And this is like a small bit of personality that you get from Hallows Eve. But goddamn, do they give you like a crumb, bro. This story is really not about her at the moment. Madelyne goes off about talking about the army and the spirits and they're primed, they're ready for action. And then she questions them again like, "Hey, should I play on?" And of course, the more music, the more that the army begins its attack, I guess. I don't know, man. The more they get revved up, the more hype. After the events at the coffee shop, Peter's walking out and he says goodnight to his friend Liz. And as he's walking out, Madelyne hits that mad riff on the keyboard again, and Peter Parker's spider sense just goes off like crazy. And I'm assuming the song that Madelyne's playing on the keyboard is also being heard by multiple people, maybe just within New York. The characters in the X-Men, they're like, "Yo, what the heck? What's that sound?" And Magic answers with, "Oh man, I don't think you're gonna like the answer to that." The more that Madelyne plays on the keyboard, the more wild things get when it comes to attacking New York. And again, this is also like a small callback to the comic book of the year that came out, where Spider-Man took out that mailbox that started attacking the random old dude. And that's basically what's happening right now. We get a display of things coming to life and they start attacking people. Like there's a couple riding this carriage ride in New York and the carriage itself comes to life. It has teeth. People got off, man. They try to play it off as like, "Oh, this is a silly, scary thing." Like there's another statue that's basically claiming like, "Oh, dude, stop trying to look up my skirt, you freaks." And that sounds pretty kid friendly for sure, but like when you look at some of these monsters, it's like, nah dude, some of these people, they got off, man. But yeah, Peter runs off and he suits up. He's trying to get a good vantage point over the situation. He immediately climbs a building, gets to the rooftop, and sees what's happening. And then we get like a double page spread of the Rockefeller Center, and there's just random monsters attacking people. It looks very silly, very cartoony for sure. That's why I like to think some of these people got ate. And then we get some action with the X-Men. They're just taking out these objects that are coming to life. And this is the point where we get a little bit about Magic's connection to Madelyne Pryor. Magic's not doing anything. She's sort of just standing there in her ugly Christmas sweater, just questioning what Maddie's up to. Like, what did she do? But as the X-Men are fighting off the random horde of enemies that are just coming to life, Madelyne Pryor and Hallows Eve are just hanging out in an alley, and there's a portal right behind them, insinuating that, of course, they just walked through it to get into New York. Madelyne asks Hallows Eve how she feels about being back at home, back in New York. Eve responds by saying that it feels like a punishment. It always did. Madelyne responds with saying, "Alright, then let's not dilly-dally. Let's cause havoc with your new friend." Of course, she's referring to Venom, Eddie Brock, but they don't reveal him just yet. Madelyne claims that they need to finish their quick mission before Ben Reilly finishes his mission, and that's immediately what the story moves over to, what he's up to during this chaos. And this sort of leads into the climactic sort of ending of this comic, which in my opinion wasn't very so. They sort of build it up to it being sort of climactic, but then it just flops. But anyways, without setting the scene too low, next we move over to Oscorp, right? Norman's inside of his office and he's listening about the events that are happening, things are coming to life. And he turns over behind him to look over at his suit. And this is where he's pondering like, oh man, he wants to help. He wants to try to be a hero. He wants to go out there and like beat some of these inanimate objects up. And then he wonders, what harm can it actually really do? And out of the corner of the room, someone replies with, a lot, trust me. Who is this? Ben Reilly. Ben questions Norman whether he remembers him at all. Norman responds with, he sounds like Peter. But Ben responds with, oh yeah, but he sounds like him. But he doesn't want to get into the details of that. Ben wonders if his name rings the bell to Norman Osborn at all. And Norman responds with, of course it does. And questions, what does he want? Ben Reilly starts talking about what he remembers about Norman Osborn before all the memory changes. And he makes it a point that he remembers all the bad things about Norman Osborn. Norman quickly picks up on the idea about what's about to happen. So he quickly moves to try to get his glider, but Ben kicks him and he flies off into the wall. And Norman clicks a button and his glider just flies directly behind Ben Reilly, sorta like to attack him in a way, and sorta distract him while he gets into his suit. The next page, we get Norman Osborn in his suit. And this is sort of where I'm like, oh man, we're about to get some cool, like, Norman Osborn in his suit action. This is where he's really gonna show off that he's a hero. He's gonna beat down Ben Reilly. But then, of course, inevitably, you know, he gets his own ass beat by Ben Reilly. Because that's basically how the page sort of ends, right? Immediately, once Norman Osborn puts on the helmet, Ben claims that he thought about this, right? He posed as Peter Parker, came all up into his gear, and set up a trap for it. He shows off how he also has a secret button to press. He presses it, and Norman's suit just explodes and knocks him out. As Norman Osborn's on the ground, Ben sort of mocks the fact that Norman Osborn just wants to make amends at that point in his life. He doesn't want to cause anyone any more misery, but of course Ben Reilly, all he remembers are the negative parts about him. So of course, being on the ground, Ben Reilly just starts pounding on him. As that's happening, we come back to what's going on with Madelyne Pryor and Hallows Eve, and it looks like Madelyne Pryor is sort of angry. She's talking to like this mysterious figure that's in the shadows, and of course it's Venom. She claims how they had an agreement, and Venom claims that was before he knew he was there. And I'm assuming he's just simply referring to, of course, Spider-Man. And Venom just runs off. Madelyne claims that Ben and her try to make Venom more of a malleable kind of character and sort of to use, of course. Well, on the next page, we get a full page artwork of just like old school Venom, where he's like super huge and buff and just mindless in a way. And he's shouting, "We're gonna eat Spider-Man's brain." And this is where I'm like, damn, dude, they really did Venom dirty in this one. First, they don't really give much perspective from his side of the story. Like, they just claim that, oh yeah, he wants to be able to find his son. That's it. That's what you dig from the Venom series. If you're like a Venom reader going into this story, you're gonna be disappointed in this specific issue. Either that, or you're probably gonna know where the rest of the Venom story is gonna head after this one. I'm sure there's gonna be a lot of conflicting thoughts over what happened to Venom right now, but I personally feel like they definitely underused him in this story. But yeah, that's basically it. That's the end of that story. Dark Web number 1. Overall, honestly, I think that was kind of a below average sort of comic. It has like very fine moments, but then it has other moments that just completely drag the fine moments down further. So yeah, basically what I took from the story is that Zeb Wells doesn't care about Venom. Maybe that's too hardcore to say, honestly. But just the way they included Venom, man, it was whack. They didn't even give him anything to do, really. They didn't show him off until the end, and then by then it's basically what's gonna happen with Venom in the next issue sort of deal. you don't get much of Venom here. So like I said, if you're a Venom reader, this is probably not a comic you definitely want to pick up, just so you know what happens with Venom. They just turn him old school, I guess, where he just wants to take out Spider-Man. But even old school Venom had his own, like, ideals, his own morals. So we'll see where they're gonna go with old school Venom being back for a brief moment. But yeah, that's basically how he gets changed. Madelyne just does some magic stuff on him. And then again, the very end fight with Norman Osborn, where he puts on the suit and he starts getting ready to fight Ben Reilly. That part was honestly so horrible. Like, I thought I was about to see a good fight with Norman Osborn getting into his suit. He's about to show off that, yeah, he's a changed man. He's gonna use his suit for good. He's about to beat the crap out of Ben Reilly, because of course he also seeks harm to Peter Parker, and because he's a friend now, he doesn't want, harm to come to his friends. So he's gonna defend Peter Parker. This is a very superhero moment, right? But they just cut it off way too soon by claiming that Ben Reilly just posed as Peter Parker, snuck into his lab, tinkered around with the suit, and put an explosive in it. Okay, that's that? Really? No fight? You're not even gonna try to convince me to buy the Gold Goblin comic book by making him really cool in this one? Why would I go out of my way to buy a comic with a Gold Goblin if he's not even enticing? Like, no, you gotta make him cool, dude. This was his moment to shine, and you guys just, spat all over that. Personally, I think they wasted the first 4 pages of this comic telling that dream sequence where they just dig down that nail, telling the reader that Ben Reilly is very self-conscious about being a clone. Yeah, I get that, dude. I've been reading the freaking story, since issue 1. But maybe this is for, the new readers that just picked this up because they see a number 1 on the cover. I don't know. But to me, that was, a waste of the 4 pages at the start, because they could have used those 4 pages to tell a really cool fight with the Gold Goblin, where, of course, inevitably at the end, he loses. Instead of just quickly saying, yeah, he snuck in and booby-trapped, things go boom. That's really my biggest deal with this specific comic. I mean, come on, dude, the next 2 pages, you do show off how he's just pounding on the Gold Goblin. You didn't just want to include a quick fight in there? Bruh. Yeah, that's basically the only bad that I have read about that comic. Overall, it just feels like a below average kind of comic, especially for the Venom readers that are coming in from the Venom run. They're gonna get absolutely no thought bubbles from Venom talking about his situation or how he's gonna find his son or anything. He's basically just ooga booga my son now. Come on, man. At the very least, the artwork definitely was decent. Some of the previous issues with Madelyne Pryor, she's looked kind of funny because of the way the artist draws her. But this particular issue, all the characters look perfectly fine. They all look great, unique. The artist did a very well job with this. Or I don't want to say well job. They did a great job, but just the writing, man, it's kind of lacking, kind of weak for sure. Just a little bit disappointing from what I thought of the previous Spider-Man issue was, number 14. That one was pretty fun. It was great. It established basically a good portion of what we get told in this comic. So that's another redundant feature about it. But anyways, without going into a further multi-long hour rant about me kind of disliking this comic, instead make sure to like and subscribe. And if you want to know more about what I think about the upcoming Dark Web event tie-ins, then, make sure to, of course, follow me. So until next time, everyone, peace.